Welcome back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina. Today's video is all about sowing the first seeds in the fall cottage garden. And I have 3 different applications for that. The first is in a kitchen garden bed that I entirely cleaned out in last week's video. And I am going to sow greens and a few flowers in that bed this week. I will show you my very simple method for sowing for a bountiful harvest of greens. Second application is a couple of pots that I will sow with viola seeds, or Johnny jump-ups as they're also called, the small pansies. And I love to have pots of these every winter. I've actually never done it from seed. And the great thing about a pot is that if for some reason it doesn't work out, then it can always be hidden, or I can start over and I may very well do another variety that I actually get from the garden center and plant starts. But I thought it would be fun to experiment with just sowing a bunch in pots and seeing what happens for the violas. The third category is sowing some hardy annuals in seed trays. So now, full disclosure, this is an experiment for me. I have always started seeds in the spring and I've never really bothered to do it also in the fall. But there are some things that I would like to have to kick off my spring season that I found just anecdotally from my experience when they self-sow in the garden. It's irregular, you can't predict it, but the result is so much better when the seedling germinates this time of year than if I were trying to start it in the spring and then it doesn't have a long enough runway to actually do anything before our heat kicks in. That's things like snapdragons, bachelor's buttons, and scabiosa. I've had all 3 of those seed themselves in my garden, but not necessarily reliably. So I might get them self-seeded, I might not, and because I really love them and want to make sure that I do, so I will be engineering that this year. We'll start in the kitchen garden, go to the pots, and then last we'll sow the seeds in trays. I have decided to sow these varieties in the bed in front of me. So endive, snapdragon, because I really value having something flowering in this bed. It greets you as you walk in the courtyard. Kale, a couple of kinds of kale, and then arugula. So this will give me a good variety. I'll do the root vegetables in the bigger bed further back over there. I'm going to come in with the snapdragons towards the back, and they're teeny little seeds. Aw, butterflies. And I will just, they get tall, so I just scatter them along the back. I know what they look like germinating, so I'll just hope that I see a lot of little babies coming up soon here. Then I will do the kale. What I'm looking for is really even, thick coverage. I learned this actually when doing a stint in our edible garden at Hort School, and my professor handed me a thick packet and said, use it all on this bed. And I thought, oh, okay, so you just ignore the spacing, and when it comes to greens, I don't want to see space between them. I want them to grow as a thicket. That means every available inch is used. Individual plants may not get as big, but that is not important to me. I'm not looking for perfect heads to cut here. All right, endive. I feel like seed packets never quite open easily. So that's going up here in the front, in this kind of quadrant of the bed. And once these start to germinate, if I see that I haven't gotten good coverage somewhere, I will come back and I will just sow more. I'm not shy about doing that. And seeds are so inexpensive that this is one of my favorite ways to garden, because you skip all the intermediate steps of having to sow in trays.
and you go straight to just coming out outside into the garden and waiting for them to come up. And the last quadrant here is arugula. I don't personally feel you can ever have too much. And no one is upset if you have a bag of fresh greens to share. I may have mentioned this, probably did in past videos as well, but I like to do successive green sowing. So I actually like that I'm starting some now before the other beds are in play. This L bed behind me and this other L bed here that's still full of peppers and beans. So this one will go first. It will give me something to harvest before the others. And then when this poops out, those will be going. It's just a great way to ensure a continuous harvest with something like greens. So having various waves of sowing is a way to make sure you always have some to pick. Because all of the seeds that I sowed were so small, I don't really tend to go back over them and cover them. I just let water, rain, settling do its work. As long as I make sure they're watered in really well, I feel like that does the tiny bit of soil shifting and ensuring contact that I need, so I don't worry about anything else. With a bigger seed, it's obviously different, but everything that I sowed this morning, very small, did not need to be covered. This is a very gentle shower, so I'm not really displacing too much. At least that is the goal. I do not want these seeds to dry out. I'm not going to leave this to chance, to rain, to just residual soil moisture in the beds, because the surface is the only thing these seeds are interacting with, and the surface is what gets very dry. You do not want the seeds drying out or just starting to germinate and then drying out and it killing them. So this is the most babying that ever has to be done in this kind of thing, is just get it really good and soaked. Some people will water their ground first, which is actually a great idea, and I probably should have done that, but you can water it first, definitely water it after, and then watch the surface moisture just to make sure you're giving your little seeds every chance, just like you would want to do in a tray. You would not want your trays to dry out. You don't want this to dry out either. I have here my packet of seeds, a couple of really simple planters. These are actually just plastic, and I like to hide them back behind other prettier planters in a grouping, but they're sturdy and they hold soil, and sometimes that's the best we can do. So I am going to top them off. They were filled in the spring. I had annuals in them, and so the soil volume is reduced. You can see how low, but yet there's not a bunch of root mat in here. It's not a problem with, it won't be a problem for new plants. I just will top it off with new soil, and then of course have to add some fertilizer to it. Here we go. I will pour seeds into my hand, make sure this top is fairly even, and these are tiny little seeds, very little, so you're not going to need a whole lot of covering, similar to the greens. I'm just going to sprinkle them in. I kind of feel like the more the merrier, that way I can always thin them out. I would rather have too many. Okay. Why not? We'll just do them all. And then
we'll water these in and put them somewhere protected and just keep an eye on them and see what happens. Here a 50 cell seed tray. I've had these for probably 6 years now and they're still going strong. You can see my trays aren't in perfect condition, but these are the kind of things I had on hand and I wasn't going to buy any more. This first seed is Salvia turkistanica, the purple one. This is a gorgeous plant, amazing for cutting. I'm sowing 2 rows of each of these. I did get the trays pre-soaked, which will save me a step. This is also clary stage, the white turkistanica. This one's gorgeous as well, very statuesque. I have 3 varieties of foxglove here. This is almost looks like verbascum. It's called silver fox. This is what I get for not being organized with my seed packets. This one's actually empty. I need to throw it away. So I will sub out some Queen Anne's lace. I did start some of this in the spring and it's been awesome as a bouquet filler. So if I have these started now, I'll have Queen Anne's lace a lot earlier in the season. Apricot Beauty foxglove. Let's see, hopefully I still have some of this. I do. This will be my last 2 rows. I've mentioned this before, but foxglove is a great thing to save seeds from, and I plan to be a lot more diligent about that because ordering a seed packet, you get, just a few, but when you save your own, you can get tons. You just don't have to be quite as careful. So those first ones were mostly perennials. These are all definitely the category of hardy annuals. The first is this Black Magic Bachelor's Button. I have not grown this one specifically this year. I grew blue, kind of the traditional color of Bachelor's Buttons. And this really dark is intriguing. I have grown this Scabiosa Black Knight, and it's awesome. But I've never started it in the fall. It'll do better done this way. I'm treating this like an experiment, and just if it works really well, then maybe I will do more another year. Okay, so 2-2. This one's also Scabiosa Pincushion Flower. This is a kind of blush color. Bells of Ireland. I've never grown this, and I have always wanted to. All right, look at me. This is in my clay knife, but there we go, like a letter opener. Much better. And last, Feverfew. This is a great filler as well. Similar to the sprays of white, but they have little yellow centers that are so cute.
I hope that if you do no other gardening this fall, that at the very least you take a packet of seeds, whether that's violas or greens, and you throw them in a pot and you water it and you watch and just see what happens. I hope you all have an awesome week in your own gardens. Happy gardening.